in this respect. But I think it's a real privilege to be here at this event and to be able to contribute our little quota. Our president has already said everything that I might have wanted to say as by way of introduction. Let me just add that very often those in the built environment profession forget that planners are not the orphans, but should be, if you like, the landlords, in quotes. Not that they collect money, but the fact that everything we do, whether it's a piece of architecture or a piece of engineering or a building to sell, takes place on land. And the orderly organization of land is what is the forte of those who are planners. So I want to thank the Abuja Housing, International Housing Show for giving planners a chance to participate so actively in this. And in the interest of time, let me just go ahead and introduce what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about green buildings and affordable housing. That is the general area we're going to cover. And we have three very, very qualified people to share some thoughts on this. I'm going to start appropriately with our female planner, Town Planner Boni Alumi. I'm going to introduce them now, and after that, I don't need to introduce them again. She has studied at both University of Lagos and University of Ilorin, both very highly regarded universities. He joined the service of the Lagos State government in the year 2000, and I've been involved in many development plans, including Papa Model City Plan, which you will see, you will go to the booth, the Kenya Model City Plan, and many others. He has also studied at the University of Liverpool. He's currently the Chief Town Planning Officer of the Lagos State Urban Development Agency. He has researched in many areas, including gender studies, data management, sustainable development goals, and so on and so forth. He has written and co-authored several papers and was the recipient of the American Award for Excellence as the second best student in the 2012 Town Planners Registration Council of Nigeria Professional Examination. You can see from her face, which you can't see, that she wears that she's happily married and enjoys travel, and which has taken her to 6 continents of the world. She's going to be speaking briefly with a special focus on green buildings, but also referring to the other issues. The second person who is going to be speaking this morning as part of the panel is Dr. Abdul Husseini. He's a town planner. Well, he's a man of many parts, let's just put it that way. Currently, he's permanent secretary for the Ministry of Lands and Housing in Niger State. But before that, he was a pioneer director, general manager of Niger State GIS systems, and he was instrumental in including me as one of the 20 foundation members of the World Council on City Data, and subsequent registration of Mina as the first city in Nigeria with ISO 37120 certification. He's a fellow of both the Institute of Town Planners and the Nigerian Environmental Society. He has more than 20 years of planning practice, and he's currently also the coordinator of Regional Center for Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development in Mina, and a recipient of the Presidential National Productive Order of Merit Award. The last, but by no means the least, is Professor Kingsley Oboy, currently the Dean of Faculty of Environmental Studies at the University of Nigeria. He has been head of Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Nigeria and coordinator of Disaster Risk Management, director of Shell Center for Environmental Management and Control, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. He is published extensively, has been a research advisor to Shell Petroleum Development Corporation, and participated in many researches and projects for state governments as well as national and international agencies. He's a fellow of the Institute of Town Planners as well as a member of the Nigerian Environmental Society. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the panelists that are going to be discussing with us today. And so without much further ado, I'm going to take my seat and allow them to talk so that we can have time to discuss. And the first person who is going to be speaking will be Town Planner Bumi Alubi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will be talking briefly about green buildings, what we mean by green buildings, and some of their features. These are just some of my thoughts to mark our thinking and to remind us of what we already know. So I have an outline here, the introduction. I'll define what green buildings are, features of green buildings, merits and demerits of green buildings, the role of town planners in achieving green buildings, and I'll show us a few pictures of where we have green buildings in Nigeria. I'll start by telling us about urbanization, which we already know. We know that it's marked, the rate has been enormous, and it has taken its toll on our development in Nigeria and in the world as well. In Nigeria, please go on. Next slide, okay. In Nigeria, the rate in 2020 was 51.96% of the total population. We recorded an increase in 2010, and this coupled with the projection on the urbanization rate in Africa, as described above, will continuously lead to a steady growth. And the result of these present rates and future projections, however, is the constraint on available resources, especially of affordable housing, on the environment by way of deterioration and economic regression. With the current global development agenda of the SDGs, which we are familiar with, and the new urban agenda of sustainable development, which says no one should be left behind, there's a need now more than ever before to look into ways of making housing affordable. After all, it is indeed a constitutional right for everyone.
A vast array of practices and techniques to reduce the negative impact of construction on the environment and human health. We can refer to our local architecture, those primitive practice then. I'm sure we remember the mud houses then, where they didn't require plants, so they had very small windows, but if we cast our minds back, they didn't require ACs, they didn't require fans, and those buildings were for them at that time. Furthermore, green buildings involve a design and construction process, which requires the cooperation of professionals in the built environment. And so I'm happy with the inauguration of the AIHS competition, which aims to bring together young professionals. This shows that in attaining or achieving green buildings, we need to work together as professionals in the built environment. And for the measurement of all these components, this green building is not, green buildings as a concept, not new, but it's also certified by several corporations and development agencies. For instance, we have the International
Finance Corporation, that is the EDGE team, working on certifying green buildings, the British Building Research Establishment, BREEAM, and the United States Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. I'll rush through features of what we consider, what we mean by when we say that some buildings are green. They efficiently use energy, water, and other resources. Case in point, for our WC and flush system, now we notice that we have the small button and the big button. for number 1 and for number 2. This is a means of efficiently using water. And for energy too, now we have what we call LED bulbs. We didn't have them a few years ago, but now a lot of people are embracing them. And for even homes, we have sensors, whereby it is when you go past that the light bulbs will come on. These are all means of reducing and efficiently using resources. Green buildings they intend to use renewable energy such as solar energy and wind energy instead of the normal electricity. Green buildings have features such as reduction. They aim to reduce waste and pollution by enabling reuse and recycling. Also, they have good indoor environmental air quality, which reduces the dependence on artificial cooling, such as air conditioning. They use materials that are ethical to use, that are non-toxic and sustainable. We also say that buildings are green when they consider the environment in design, construction, and operation with respect to global warming and climate change. Another feature is that they consider the quality of life of the occupants in terms of design, construction, and operation. Green buildings have designs that enable adaptation to a changing environment. Some of the merits of green buildings include reduction of the emission of carbon monoxide. Green buildings are comfortable, they're safe, they're healthy, and they thrive in a healthy environment. There's a reduction in the cost of maintenance on the long run, though there's an upfront of about 3% in cost of in construction. Green buildings encourage other sources of energy and energy efficiency. I talked about the wind and the solar energy. Green buildings ensure that water as a resource is conserved. Green buildings are also durable, they're maintainable with minimal environmental impacts. And some of their demerits include the high cost of construction, albeit in the short run, this will be gained in the long run. Green buildings incur huge costs for certification and for services of experts. Green buildings are often not aesthetically pleasing or appealing, but to the private developer and friendly, because consumers usually value aesthetics. They necessarily don't come in the package that we expect them to come. Then we also have the problem of perception and conflict, where building materials and green buildings do not project social equity with respect to the homeowners and builders as they desire them. So the role as town planners, our roles in achieving green buildings are basically in the areas of planning policies and standards. We ensure compliance of space standards, building codes, and housing occupancy standards as related to green buildings. We ensure that they're adhered to in the process of execution. We also prepare several hierarchy of plans, zoning and urban design that will include land use that have green buildings, So in conclusion, I'd like to say that in spite of the challenges associated with affordable housing in Nigeria, the pursuit of sustainable development, adaptation to climate change, and economic prosperity should embrace now a gradual shift to green buildings. It is important that we know that there are already green buildings in Nigeria, as I mentioned earlier. I'll show us some of the pictures. We have the Lekki Pearl Estate. We have the Greenage Student Housing in the University of Abuja. We have the Julius Berger Head Office here in Abuja and the Peridot Park Estate in Lagos. Thank you. I would yield the floor to my fellow discussants to take us on affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Chairman of this occasion, and the organizer for giving us this very, very, should I say, special occasion to come and discuss about affordable housing, what and how planning or planners can be upheld. I was very impressed with the discussion that took place on this project. And one statement that was mentioned, which really was fundamental and we need to take advantage of, which the president mentioned in his inauguration. Instead of competition, collaboration. No one individual can provide the kind of city that we all need as citizens anywhere. And there are this language and there are some conferences some years back whereby it was titled Providing Cities with a Soul. And somebody asked, how can you give a city a soul? You can't give a city a soul without having to think about that city, knowing how the city really moves, and then what are the requirements? And that's why we're here today. I start with a very simple, my slide. Is it there? Well, I started with asking the very simple question of, when we talk about affordable housing, or my title is to reflection on the role of planning and affordable housing in sustainable economic development. Planning and then affordable housing in economic development. Because this is something very important. And we ask this question, what is affordable housing? At what point? Can we, somebody mentioned, can we have a house, the architect, 100,000. That was his dream. It moved to 3 million. Now you will be seeing advert 20-something million. Then you wonder how can somebody get that kind of a house with the reality on ground? How affordable is affordable? And then affordable for who? Because these are the questions that we need to understand, because we have a project in Mina by Federal Ministry of Works, 1 bedroom going for about 3-something million, 4 million. Then the average man from Mina will say, okay, with 4 million, I can go and build a very good 3-bedroom somewhere. So these are the kind of questions that we need to look at reality, Abuja, Lagos, Mina. And then are we looking at house or housing? House is just a unit. Housing is all that it involves, all that we're looking for. Then what is the nexus between housing, urbanization, and plan? This is very important. I think this is what, in the course of this discussion, we'll try to really look at. And I think it's very, very important, the link between housing, urbanization, and planning. We have already been saying it. We have listened for the past 2-3 years and for the past 15 years how important housing is, and then as a sector, and also to individual. The European Commission, for instance, in 2005 said that housing accounts for between 10 to 20% of economic activities of countries. This is something that we need to look at. Economically, from time immemorial, when you talk of housing, you are looking at something that is economically important, not only to that individual, but to the system. And the need for housing is not only one of basic human needs, but also an indicator of living standard. This is very important. And also in the morning session, I was happy they mentioned this issue of standard of living. What and what? When you live in a place, the kind of building you have in a place, the condition of the environment might dampen the value of that property. So it is in that light that we look at two perspectives of what housing is all about. You can look at housing either as a what, as a process or a product. And I think as professionals and planners, architects, land surveyors, SS surveyors, all of us work together as a team to achieve the desired result. And for us to achieve not only a product, but that process that involves mortgage, financing, and other things, that is fundamental. And now we have another dimension, which, believe me, the presentation on Protect is a dimension that is not only going to bring destruction, but is going to turn around a lot of things, which is very important. So the process of housing and then as a product is something that we need to look at, and then how do we take advantage of it in the course of achieving what is expected. Different economies across the world try to define housing economically from the point of view of either as a commodity, a tangible asset, or as a fixed asset, regardless of whether it is being used by you or you are renting it out. So if you look at all of this, that is where this issue of 10 or 20% economic growth that is bringing value to the economy of any nation. But it has another very important perspective when you look at what can it do in the system. When you look at construction of a house, I will maybe come to that later, during one of the programs that took place, I think 2014, during the ministerial leadership of this woman, the new DG of World Trade Organization. But most importantly, it brings about reduction in unemployment. It also improves health and productivity, and then it can turn unskilled landed property into something which somebody mentioned in the morning, issue of unbundling the potential the capital is in. But there is this position which is also tilting towards that presentation of money. How do you unbundle, turn this debt capital into real capital? So many authors, so many economists, for instance, Hanido De Soto, Peruvian, these economists that talk about a very good presentation under this Ministry of Capital, how the West move on using property right and so on and so forth. And the other part of the world are left behind. Maybe we can look at ourselves. But my interest, if you look at what I have there, is we have a kind of complete upside down understanding of this thing. And I was happy with that position that somebody mentioned that if we are not careful in the long run, this issue of titling going to registry for something might not even be necessary. What is really happening now is because of application of GIS, the reference point is ages. Then you look at Lagos. Then every other state is creating what? Geographic information system. I work there. What is the incentive? Why do we really create such kind of outfit? Is it for revenue or to empower, as that economic provision said, to empower people so that they can turn their debt capital into real capital? Is that the reason why you want to give them title so that they can use it? Or you are doing like a kind of checkpoint? When you have title, then we will not catch you, and then you pay revenue. And this is the kind of thing. And that is why Mabogo just stated in, I think, their report, what percentage of Nigerians are with title? Very minimal. And interestingly, very, very interestingly, most of us educated, I'm sorry to use this word, are those that are very careful to get title because we know the implication. If you go to a place where, for instance now, some states, the total registry is 500,000, 50,000, sorry, 50,000 files with a population of 5 million. Then you can talk about number of properties. But the moment you hear GIS outfit is revenue. But what can we do to improve access to title as a means of economic empowerment of the public? And that is where this issue of turning housing into economic asset will come in. I try to show some graph, it's up again, where despite all this value and importance of housing,
No, this construction is for the main suspect. I like to see the old organization. Over the period, was not more than 2%. That was even at the highest. All others, so that's it. Like I mentioned in the so let me prepare this one. You can never see the economic development. And that is why if you want to really have the benefit of organization, then you have to be the people of organization. Because there are organizations, this is value that we people economic development. that I have one. Having said that, we have about 3 or 4 population. Somebody mentioned it. We have got 11.
And if you look at target number 1 is by 2030 to ensure access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing. That is the target. As a group, what are we doing towards achieving that? What is our role? How do we report that achievement individually and collectively? And then we have the urban agenda, which somebody mentioned, leaving no one behind.
Added something, no one and no space behind. In planning, because whatever you have in space needs to be planned. So, new urban agenda and principle for the planning, development management, and improvement of cities.
Then we have the urban rural linkages. This is a new concept, which is all under the UN Habitat initiative to make sure that no one and no place is left behind unattended. And that is why they introduced the concept of territorial planning, because it's not only the issue of urban, but you have also people that are living in rural areas. And in between, you have farmland, water bodies, and so on and so forth. All this need to be planned. And because of that, we need to have them taken care of. But I would like to close by highlighting something very important here. Within the last 2-3 months, we are all aware of what is happening across the country. Cholera outbreak. Some states are counting for us, 1,000. And then so far we have already recorded, I think, either 400 or so deaths across the country. What is the cause? Wherever you find this disease or this ailment, you must associate it with something, filthy environment. At this stage, I think we should be more than this. And what is the implication? This will also create a lot of burden on our health system. Already we are battling with corona. And then this one is coming up. But as planners, this is where we are coming from. What is the position that we can take to make things better? Somebody made a presentation and she mentioned a very simple analysis. You can have a very big building and construct the most gigantic building in 3 years, 4 years. But believe me, the city of your dream, a city with a soul that you want, will take you 30 years. So if you make a mistake in the first place in trying to build your city in a manner that is not planned, in a manner that some of the consideration is not being given, then we're in for trouble. And I think that is why we come in as planners and as professionals. No one person, no one professional body can do that. But we have to work as a team. And I think with technology, we have every opportunity to make things work so that the environment you live should reflect the kind of person you are and then the kind of society you live. Thank you very much.
We'll now call on Professor Oboy to make the last of the presentations.
Thank you, moderator. I want to also thank my colleagues who spoke on green housing and affordable green building and affordable housing. First, all the while, I'll be here for about 3 days now, and everybody's talking about the house, the price, affordable, or whatever. Actually, I want to make a little clarification that the house, the structure is different from housing. The structure, next slide, please. Housing across the structure itself, the environment, the use of the house, the interaction of the people, the infrastructure, and the services that are delivered to the house. So whosoever that lives in the house should have some level of satisfaction. And when that is achieved, I will not say we have gotten a decent and affordable housing. The city is actually the engine of the development. Now we'll talk about urbanization. And today, somebody mentioned the value chain approach, where all the professionals come in. All we have been talking about collaboration and all that. Along the line, you see where the planner comes in and where planning comes in from the beginning, starting from when you have to get your land to when you have to maintain the house where you are living. These are all processes that leads or stages in the process that lead us to affordable housing and green city or green building. We'll go ahead. The key objective of affordable housing actually is to ensure that all residents of a particular place or settlement have access to decent and affordable housing. At this point, we'll look at what role does a planner play, or what role does planning play in this process. So, if you look at that, you find out that whatever we are talking about here, about house or housing, all these are activities that are carried out in the city. And it is the sole responsibility of the town planner or town planning to organize the city. So first, for you to build a house, you have to organize the setting. And the planner or planning goes out with produced plans, regional plan. Somebody, Dr. Hussein talked about territorial planning, urban master plan, neighborhood planning, and all that. These are units that are put in order to ensure that your settlement is well organized. And that is the first responsibility of the town planner. Beside that, for you to come achieve affordable housing, you also need to select the site. I remember yesterday somebody was talking about location. Now, one of the major problems we have about affordable housing is location. In most cases, these houses are located far away from the users. So, site selection is the responsibility of the town planner. In planning, we have some for you to dwell in a house, affordable housing, decent housing, there must be an interaction between the house where you are living and your economic activities. The places you go, the shopping, the church or mosque that you attend, and every other activity, the place where you earn your living, your livelihood are related. And it is the town planner or the town planning that makes sure that these things are organized for you to achieve this in an efficient and effective way. Urban management is also another issue, area that the town planner takes control. When these activities are organized, the land uses are provided, facilities are provided, continuous maintenance, continuous management of the urban system is very, very important. So when we talk about affordable housing, we relate it to all these other facilities and uses, and you find out that at the end of the day, we have a dream and we will realize our dream. That takes also urban renewal. Somebody talk about urbanization, and we're made to also understand that, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, that our cities, we have a wide number of slums and bad areas. And these are errors of the past. The way we built the houses, the way we related these houses to the living environment and activities of the residents. At the end of the day, we ended up creating slums unconsciously. Now, to address this problem, because if you talk about affordable housing today and not properly organized, these houses are likely to turn into slums to go tomorrow. And for us, and most of the people we are talking about, the poor, the low-income earners, and that is exactly where they find themselves. So first, before we even begin to talk about building new houses, where they live currently, we need to address the problems there. Environmental sanitation, access to facilities, and so on. So urban management and urban renewal are the strategies, they are the tools we use in reorganizing, putting these places in better condition for the people to dwell in. Then, beside that, urban governance is another area where planning comes in. We're structured, we're organized institutional framework. We have town planning authorities, we have development agencies by the government, even the private sector are coming in. So we need to put in a well-organized structure, which is the governance system. It is not being achieved today because the institutional framework for achieving these things are not there or poorly structured. So bringing in planning at the beginning and the onset, putting the institutions in order, enabling laws, the town planning laws at the local level, at the state level, at the national level, will help us towards achieving affordable housing in this country. Then infrastructure, I mentioned infrastructure, because apart from the land uses, other related infrastructure and service delivery are the things we require for the affordable housing. Those who live in houses, not only that the houses will be affordable to them, but the houses also have to be what? Satisfactory. The houses have to be decent. The houses have to give them some sense of belonging in the community. And when they achieve this fulfillment, then we require the infrastructure and services to be provided in an efficient and cheap way for them. Because the house is not just about the structure I said earlier, it's also about the services that are being delivered on a daily basis. If you go to the slums, part of the problems we have in those slums and blighted areas are that because the facilities are not there or they are poorly maintained. So that is part of the responsibility of the town planner or town planning from time to time to ensure that adequate facilities are provided, the systems are maintained, and the individuals who live in these houses and their feelings are also aspirations are also taken into consideration. Disaster risk management is another area. Now, before we're talking about direct construction of houses, today we are talking about affordable housing. But another area that the world is going into is resilient houses. So we should focus our mind on resilient housing. When we talk about 1 million naira house, please, we should also be very careful what we are talking about. It's a very good and bright idea. But when these houses are not resilient to the impact of climate change, then we record colossal damage at the end of the day. Most of our cities are recording high level of flooding, arising from where we locate the houses, how the structures are built, the components of those houses. And when we do not address all these things or put them in place from the beginning, then we will have serious problems. So to reduce risk, disaster risk in areas where we locate houses, the town planner has to come in, bring in his own tools and organize these areas and make sure that the facilities that are brought in and make sure that the houses that are constructed are resilient to the impact of climate change. Then I also want to talk about development control, which most times we all of us do understand. That for you to build a house, somebody needs to actually go through the plan to ensure that these things are in order. Most times, developers always have this problem of non-compliance. You give a plan for somebody to develop a 3-bedroom, the next day is 5-bedroom. In some cases, home-based activities, shops are introduced, the whole environment is destroyed. More or less, the whole environment becomes so unorganized. So, complying with the standards, town planning standards is very important because the whole essence is to ensure that the environment is decent for us to live in. And from time to time, when plans are developed by planners, given the changing, emerging situations, changing nature of our cities, you find out that from time to time we are required to review our plans. So planning ensures that periodically existing development plans and instruments are reviewed. These are global best practices across the world. They do that. UN Habitat is coming up with a number of tools that will help planners to even integrate what we call inclusive planning, where the residents themselves are also part of the exercise. So, ladies and gentlemen, while we review, we also monitor development, and at the end of the day, we achieve what we call affordable housing, and we achieve green cities, green development. Just to conclude, please take it to the last slide. I just want to establish here that planning is necessary. Every activity towards realizing green building and affordable housing takes place in urban space. Therefore, without urban planning, our cities will be in crisis. Our neighborhoods will be disorderly. Our communities will turn into slums and will not be able to realize the dream of affordable housing. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you by saying that planning is necessary. Thank you.
There's a slight addition, and I'm going to ask the MC to comment and give us a slight addition.
Round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen. Without planning, our cities will be in what? Disarray. Thank you very much. A round of applause for him, please. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, in the spirit of collaboration, I would want to invite Professor Charles Iyangete, Chairman, Innovative Risk and Investment Solutions Limited, to give a presentation for 5 minutes on regenerating rural communities to stem urbanization. Please, a round of applause for him. Permit me to call him Town Planner Prof. Charles Iyangete.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the privilege. Can you put up my, okay, thank you. I stand on existing protocols. This really is in the spirit of collaboration. In my other life, I've been a developer, and counting as of 10 years ago, it was about 400 housing units. Not all necessarily affordable, but moving forward, we'll make them more and more affordable. We're looking at regenerating rural communities to stem urbanization. This is a radical thinking away from the idea of building yet more cities. Why not start at where they are to address the problem? And that's the disruption that we're bringing. We know the challenges of urbanization. Next slide, please. I only have 5 minutes. 4.2 billion people, about half of the world's population, living in cities, might be 80% in 30 years' time. 1.6 million people every week are moving into cities, into urban locations. In Lagos, we expect that in 15 years, there'll be about 77 million people. And the world currently occupies 3% of the land, yet account for 72% of the greenhouse emissions. Next, if we do nothing, it would only get worse. We'll face demands for housing, for transportation, for energy, infrastructure, jobs, all the gamut of requirements that make a city work. I was pleased to hear you say, if we do not plan well, we'll be managing a crisis. I think we're actually already on the precipice of a crisis because of where we are in terms of our cities. So the adverse impact of urbanization on the climate, we know, pollution, insufficient water availability, poor waste disposal, high energy consumption, and increasing flooding. We're seeing just about so many cities across various continents at this very moment flooding. We've seen what COVID has done. In my view, and this is, can you move on to the slide that says climate risk? Climate risk is a function of three things: vulnerability, hazard, and exposure. About half a billion urban residents live in coastal areas, which are increasingly vulnerable to storm surges and sea level rises. This is not rocket science, we're seeing it. About 90% of urban expansion in developing countries is near hazard-prone areas. And 136 of the world's big cities, about 100 million of the residents of those cities, which is about 20% of their population, exposed in terms of access to 4.7 trillion, not naira, US dollars, are exposed. So when you look at those three factors, vulnerability, hazard, and exposure, it's a big issue we need to address. So building the rural communities that work, which is the ethos of where we are coming from, it needs to be a place where people can live, where people can do their business, where people can live there sustainably. And that's the challenge. It needs to be a place where the policymakers, all the professionals, the town planners in particular, at the forefront of it, can really craft policies to attract investments to those locations. And we have some ideas. The rural future communities will be places where you have power, where you have water, where you have transportation, and these need to be master planned from the beginning. You need to have social facilities, you need to have commercial facilities, and you need to be able to bring business to those locations, rather than making people have to come to the cities in order to survive. You want to take the business to them, you want to take livability to them, you want to take security to them. And so stemming climate action or stemming rural-urban migration is a climate action issue, to my mind. And this could start with our local authorities. 774 of them could be a starting point. I know Raiden is doing his 774 local authority project. Perhaps it should be looking at how to keep the people there, and then the housing would be a follow-on. Let's look at the master plan, if you can go to the master plan. If you look at this master plan, what we're proposing is to have a modular presentation of all that is needed for somebody to stay in the rural communities, to make the rural communities vibrant places. So in number 3 there, we're starting with security. We know that part of what is driving people out is security. So there'll be a police post there. Are we on that? Yeah. There'll be a police post. The next one, moving along, number 6, is a health facility, a community clinic, not a hospital necessarily, depending on the size of the community. The next, number 7, is an equipment hire place, because we know rural communities depend largely on agriculture. You can hire the equipment rather than having to own your own. It can be mining equipment, all of the things that support the way of life of the rural community. Number 9 there is educational facilities, training of artisans, training of people to do the things they need to do to survive in those locations. Number 4 across there is a local government office. That's where your town planning facilities could be, and everything that is required to drive a local community that works. 9, 10, and 11, and so on. These are all the things that come together to really make those communities work. And why are we looking at it from that perspective? It is in that perspective that you begin to find that you cause an environment to exist that makes people want to live in the villages, want to live in the rural communities, because they have commerce there, they have banks in the commercial area, they have clinics to support their health, they have education and training for their work, they have things to support their business. Those are all of the things. I don't have enough time to go through all of them, but just skip through the slides and I'll speak about each one. The next slide, please. There are about 4 or 5 slides left. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Can you go back to the master plan? Go back one more. One more. Back. Yeah, you can see the police station. And notice everything that you need to use to build these things are in the locality. You use local building materials, the burnt bricks, stones. Even you could use a thatch roof if you so prefer, but you can use modern roofing as well. We also are looking to have them to be completely naturally ventilated. So you have these buildings, as you see, if you look at them, they have perforations in them. The blocks that are used need perforations for cross ventilation. So you don't need to have fans, you don't need to have ACs in them. You may need to have fans in some of them. So that's the essence of this. And really, we believe that this bioorientation of the building, allowing them to breathe air, to circulate properly, and villages can be part of the building. This is not an expensive option. It's actually a cheap option when you think of the potential impact of bringing people. The power needs to be renewable power. It's power resident there. You don't need to take pylons to the villages. You need to set up power plants that are renewable energy, solar power plants in the local communities. But because we've been doing them without creating the things around the locality to make it work, we have not been able to sustain that. So for sustainability, the commercial aspect of it, the livability of the villages, of the rural communities,
So I'm recognizing the people in front, but I'm also eyeing. Okay, so we have 5 questions. 3 in the front, then 1 at the back. With your permission, I want to start at the back because so that we can get Okay. Is the microphone off? You already have? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a permanent emphasis because I think I agree with my brother's opening statement about the whole planning, human settlements, and the impact it has on the quality of life. We know that even the place like Abuja, which is now our newest human settlement, is beginning to struggle with orderliness, growth, and the kind of planning that Kenitani envisaged at the beginning. My real question is this: as also a house nexus between planning, town planning, and architecture, and how does that relate to the emerging ideas around urban design? So essentially looking at smaller entities rather than the big scale, which in some societies is now attributed to planning. And there's that little pocket in the middle around architecture and urban design. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm suggesting that because of limited time, we should ask the questions, all the questions, and then we can get responses. And please, as much as possible, go directly to the question. Okay, let's just bring the microphone this way and we shall finish right here. We have one, yes, that, and then there's a gentleman in the white mask. I can't see, the light is directly in my eyes. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Chisom Fugova. So I'd want to know, do you have branches in other states apart from Abuja? And how, because I think planning should also work in other states too. And also, I want to know, do you collaborate with other organizations like FEMA? Because housing is very important, as we have learned here today. But the roads leading to those homes, are actually very important. Because places like, if you're going to, I think, Upper Resettlement or so, the roads leading to, for you to get home, you have to struggle and stay in traffic for a very long time. And this is actually very tiring. So I want to know, do you partner with organizations to make sure that these things are actually affected properly? And also, are there plans in place for cities like Lagos, where flooding has affected many people and traffic too? Are there plans in place to actually rejig things and make the town better? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you're all listening. The gentleman.
Thank you. I'm a grassroots development enthusiast, and I also am the President General of the Unity Schools Old Students Association, and also a village chairman. Hence my question. Are there any regional plans for local governments, areas, and I'm particularly interested in Edo and Delta State. Now, the other question, listening to all the presentations, I noticed there was no emphasis on climate change and how it impacts on town planning currently in Nigeria. We have quite a few issues around that currently. My village, Ikara community in Edo State, I'm very interested in seeing how I can work with the stakeholders here, the professionals here, to make sure that village, which is 1,600 hectares, becomes an eco-tourist, livable village, not a town, but exactly containing what the Professor Iyangete had stated. So all those components are within. So I'm putting myself forward and my village forward to see how we can work to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's come to the front. We have two people in front here. And those are the last two questions.
Thank you, sir. Mine is actually just a small comment, because my brother, I think the first presenter, made a very, very fundamental point, which we need to pay particular attention to. Because that's one of the fundamental problems of housing and real estate in Nigeria. When we talk about the issue of title,
why do we say people need access to title? Because what has happened is that government, has put in place a system whereby they have imputed revenue generation philosophy into that whole process, and that is the problem. In 1992, I was a young lecturer at the University of Lagos in the law faculty, and during the second national workshop on land use act, I delivered a paper which actually published socio-economic implications of the consent provisions of the land use. It's published, and we can just Google my name, you'll see it. And I said something like, state government always lay ambush for applicants for consent. And it is the same problem today. We make beautiful regulations. If you look at the consent provisions of the Land Use Act, one of the objectives is actually planning, is to monitor land movement and land transfers. But we have thrown that to the wind. Everything is about revenue generation. And that is still the problem. So today we make beautiful regulations, but we just try to use it to generate money. Just wait and generate money. I always give an example. You have a law against tree felling. The objective is environmental sustainability. Whenever anybody comes, I want to fell 10 trees, want to cut 10 trees, you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How much is one tree? 100,000. Go and pay 1 million. You cut it without putting in place a regeneration process. That is still the fundamental problem. And if we must turn around the issue around title and access to good titled land, governments have to start understanding that much more than revenue generation, this regulatory framework have greater role to play in planning, in urban design, and and that's an area that I'm very interested in. I just wanted to make that contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last speaker.
Yeah, my name is Engineer Kunu from Rwanda. I'd like to know, we're talking about town planning. What I'm hearing is more like how it should be planned, how it should be done. I have 2 houses in the US. Before I bought them, I have to do a research. I have to know what I need and what is available. So in Rwanda and most of the Eastern region, East African region, you can see what is being planned for every part of Rwanda. Last year ended the 20 years plan for the year. So as we speak right now, we have up to 2050 master plan for the entire land in Rwanda. So you know what road is going to come up. You know what facility needs to be where. So in a forest, in an empty land, you already know what the government expects to be there. So my question is, when we're talking about slum area, we equally have slum in Kigali. There are 10 major slum areas in Kigali city. We already know what government expects to be in those slums and how those slums need to be integrated into the new plan. So my question is, do we have that plan in Nigeria? And if we do, please, can you share so that we can look at them? My second question is, you're talking about green houses, green buildings. Is there a criteria to differentiate between 2 or 3 houses to say, okay, this particular house has met the minimum requirement of a green house or a green building? Thank you.
Thank you very much for all those questions. I'm going to give 2 minutes to each of the people to respond to any of those questions. Please just keep them as brief as possible, so that because each of these things, my head is boiling with things that can be said. But if we allow that, we'll be here till tomorrow. I don't think that is the intent of the organizer. So I'm going to start with Professor Boy at the other end. I'll just take 2 minutes and respond to any of the issues that we raised that you feel that you want to comment on.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I'll just take a few of the questions. Somebody was talking about going beyond revenue. Okay. Well, I quite agree with you. This situation is a very serious situation. Put it, for example, in Enugu, where I am, we used to have zoo. Now it is called Zoo Estate. So you can imagine whether it's rich men or the animals living in that zoo. So you know what I mean. Therefore, regional plan for Edo and Delta area. I am from Delta State. Actually, it's quite unfortunate that for a number of years, Benin City, the major city in Edo State, never had a plan. It's just of recent that government just commissioned a plan. Warri had a plan, Warri master plan was not implemented. Asaba, since 1991, that Asaba had was supposed to have a plan when it became a state, Delta State. Up to now, there's no functional master plan. So you see the political will on the part of government is part of the problem that we are suffering. Then somebody was asking whether there are local planning areas. Yeah, it cuts across from at the federal level. We have Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Urban Development, and so on. At the state level, we also have planning authorities. At the local government areas, we also have planning with the agencies. So I think that covers the area. And for collaboration, from time to time, NITP and Town Planning Registration Council, even at the local level, they also collaborate. Let me give room for other persons to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You have already touched on the nexus between planning and architecture, which somebody mentioned, because of the need for us to work together. It's very important to look at it from that angle. And I think, yeah, most of the initial plan, I remember in those days when I was going through file, when I joined Nigeria State Government Services, I was reading a file by late Baobari, who was the then chief campaign officer from Sokoto, Northwest, back to Nigeria State. And the urban road department was in the town planning department because of this relationship, the linkage. But this territoriality, everybody wants to defend, and work, and that is what is really causing this problem. If not from the one, that relationship, which I think the spirit of this meeting that we are having this summit should give us opportunity to start looking at that. We cannot achieve that target of having the kind of city we want without working together. I think that is very important. For the purpose of the question of planning and branches, of course, NITP, we have national and then we have branches everywhere in Nigeria. Regional plans, that is a problem. How often do we renew our plans? That is the major challenge. For instance, in Niger State, Max Love, most of the northern region or northern state, they have their last review plan by Max Love over 25 years ago. What is the cause of the problem? Political will. And what we need to know is that for us to achieve what we are looking for, there must be a plan, a legal framework like somebody mentioned here, and the finance to implement that plan and political will. Most importantly, if there is no participation and inclusiveness, then you have a problem. Finally, continuity. When you plan, that is the problem. City can never be the kind of city we want in 5 years. It will be 20, 30 years. So it will be beyond one administration. But there is this lack of continuity. That's why we have a problem. Until we develop that, we'll be having that issue. Access to title. I raise this and I know why I mentioned it. And I'm happy you echo that. How do we close that gap? Until we look at the opportunity in empowering our people with title than revenue. When people approach you, then you know where they are. Then you can plan for them. If they know you put a roadblock, nobody will come. And I think we need to change that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The question that somebody asked a question about plans in Lagos State. We do have in Nigeria, we have several levels of plans in Lagos State. And another question was asked about green building, the criteria. Presently, the Lagos State government is working with the IHS in adopting the EDGE application to train experts to be able to design and certify buildings as green in Lagos. And for the village in Edo State, I would still say that we have to adopt urban renewal as a strategy for regenerating core areas where houses can be made affordable, as corroborated by the professor. In all, affordable housing must be resilient. For them to be resilient, we need to comply with planning standards.
Thank you very much. Now is my chance. Okay, let's hear the applause. Nobody is going to bill you for applauding. Okay, there have been so many issues that have been raised that one would wish to follow. But as we're talking, one thing that came to my mind as my summary, I'm remembering what Dr. Adedeji, I don't know whether any of you remember him. He used to be the commissioner for local government under Gowon. He warned in the conference on urban development in Sokoto in 1972. He warned that if we don't do something about planning in our cities, we are going to have a chaos of unimaginable proportions. We ignored him. We put planning on the back burner. We're more interested in issuing something that was, how will I put it? We're talking about political will, contract ready, you know, that kind of thing. Because planning, you don't see the immediate benefit of it. But when you don't have planning, you have chaos. He also made a statement that in most Nigerian cities, planning is a term used in jest. And unfortunately, it is still true. We have so many plans. I have in my office stacks upon stacks upon stacks of plans in virtually every state. None of them is being implemented. When I came back from studying overseas in '77, I reviewed all the master plans that were being done by all the consultants in Plateau State. Then Plateau State included what is now Benue, Nasarawa, and all of that. None of those plans, not even one, was ever implemented. And that is the challenge we face. We talk about planning, but we don't really believe that we need to plan. And until we believe we need to plan, we're still going to have these problems, and it will only get worse. So I'm happy that this housing show has tried to bring all of us in the planning or in the built environment together, because it cannot be a fight that only one group will fight. If we, all of us, telling the people who make the decisions that everybody has to, that we have to get on this planning bandwagon and make sure that our cities are planned. Otherwise, we're just going to end up with more and more chaos. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it has been useful.
Mr. President, before you round up, I just want to ask the moderator a question. So why are these plans not being able, why are they not implemented?
Because the people who gave them didn't intend for them to be implemented. That's a simple answer to give.
Can you expatiate? What do you mean by that?
I think I've said enough.
Okay, well, it's my job to ask questions. That's what I'm asking. Because if you are in charge of town planning and you have the plans and they're not being implemented, then
Can I respond?
Please go ahead, Mr. President.
One of the things we need to understand is that the responsibility to plan is that of government. The duty to bring those plans on paper is that of planning and the collaborating professions. The participation in plan preparation is inclusive. And that's why I recall what Professor Nyangete said in the previous session. He talked about democratization. The implementation of plans in Nigeria has not been democratized. And I'll probably answer the question of our brother from Kigali. Nigeria promulgated the Urban and Regional Planning Law in 1992. And the government has broken its own law by not preparing any plan at all. There's supposed to be national plan, there's supposed to be regional plans, under which what Professor Inyang presented. Ordinarily, if there's a regional plan of a state, Every state governor should know what is happening in every community in his state. So the duty to do that belongs to government. The advocacy is now ours. And that is why I'll be leaving here very early tomorrow morning. As I land in Lagos, I'm heading for Ekiti State. I had been on a nationwide tour. And while I was in Ekiti State 2 weeks ago, and I opened this up to them, they said, you must come and speak in our retreat, which is holding 2 weeks from now. So we are opening the eyes of the blind, including those in government, so that they can understand that the sequence in the world is that planning precedes development. Just like thinking precedes speaking. And the good book says, do you see a man who speaks without thinking? He said there is more hope for a fool than for him. So when you see a nation, a group of people that develop without planning, there's more hope for a fool. And we're trying to ensure that we don't walk the path of foolishness.
Thank you very much,
That's
Mr.
the reason
President.
we're here.
Thank you. A round of applause for him. Thank you, sir. Please, you just rise up for the photograph. This has been a very engaging session, I must say. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for them as they take their seats. Quickly, I'd like to invite the MD of Family Homes Funds for the presentation. His presentation is going to be on social housing